The sergeant smirked, calling her just a nurse. 10 seconds later, 3 SEALs were on the ground. The training mat at Naval Special Warfare Training Center had never witnessed such sudden and complete dominance. Lieutenant Commander Victoria Storm Hayes stood calmly adjusting her medical uniform, while 3 of the facility's most experienced SEAL instructors lay motionless around her, their combined 67 years of special operations experience rendered meaningless by techniques that had moved faster than human eyes could follow. Before we uncover this stunning story of hidden combat mastery, tactical deception, and the moment that shattered every assumption about military medical personnel, tell us in the comments which country you're watching from today. And if you believe that underestimation can be the most dangerous tactical mistake, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. The silence that followed was deafening. 42 SEAL candidates stood frozen in their observation positions, trying to process how their harmless medical support had just executed the most flawless multiple opponent takedown any of them had ever witnessed. The 3 instructors, Master Chief Rodriguez, Senior Chief Thompson, and Chief Petty Officer Martinez, remained on the mat, each one stunned by the realization that they had just been outclassed by someone they had dismissed as irrelevant to their warrior culture. Gunnery Sergeant Michael Iron Fist Kowalski, the man who had made the dismissive comment, stood with his mouth agape, his 23 years of Marine Corps combat experience suddenly feeling inadequate as he tried to understand what had just occurred. The woman he had mocked as just a nurse had demonstrated combat capabilities that exceeded anything in his extensive military background. "Sweet Mother of God," whispered Petty Officer Jackson, his voice barely audible in the shocked quiet. "She didn't just beat them, she made it look effortless." Lieutenant Commander Victoria Hayes had arrived at Naval Special Warfare Training Center with transfer orders that appeared completely routine. Medical officer assigned to provide advanced trauma care and medical support for SEAL training operations. Her credentials were impeccable: medical degree from Harvard, trauma surgery residency at Johns Hopkins, deployments to forward operating bases in Iraq and Afghanistan providing medical care for special operations forces. But her personnel file contained classified annexes that documented 26 years of training in the Pentagon's most secretive hand-to-hand combat research program, designated only as Project Nemesis, a joint military intelligence initiative that created combat capabilities exceeding anything previously documented in human history through revolutionary approaches to biomechanics, neurological enhancement, and tactical psychology. The program had been developed in response to intelligence indicating that enemy forces were developing asymmetric warfare capabilities that targeted American special operations personnel through coordinated physical attacks designed to exploit perceived vulnerabilities. Traditional military combatives were proving insufficient against opponents who used deception, superior numbers, and psychological manipulation to gain tactical advantages that could compromise entire operations. Project Nemesis represented the ultimate evolution of human combat capability, combining ancient martial arts wisdom with cutting-edge neuroscience, biomechanical engineering, and psychological warfare. The program's graduates could neutralize multiple trained opponents simultaneously using techniques that appeared to violate fundamental laws of physics and human limitations. Victoria's selection for Project Nemesis had occurred 24 years earlier during her medical school training when a terrorist attack on the university hospital revealed combat instincts that challenged every known parameter of human performance. 12 armed attackers had entered the facility intending to take hostages and demand the release of imprisoned associates, but they encountered someone whose response to mortal threat exceeded anything in their training or experience. The engagement at Massachusetts General Hospital had begun during Victoria's surgical rotation when the al-Qaeda-affiliated cell known as Brotherhood of the Sword had breached hospital security using stolen maintenance credentials. Their plan was sophisticated: seize control of the intensive care unit, threaten the lives of critically injured patients, and use the media attention to broadcast demands for prisoner releases and policy changes. What they found instead was Dr. Victoria Hayes, a fourth-year medical student who had been assisting with emergency surgery when the attackers entered the operating wing. The terrorists had expected to encounter defenseless medical personnel who would surrender immediately when confronted with superior firepower and coordinated assault tactics. Victoria's response had been so swift and devastating that hospital security cameras required frame-by-frame analysis to document the engagement sequence. Her elimination of all 12 attackers had been accomplished in under 4 minutes using surgical instruments, medical equipment, and barehanded techniques that demonstrated combat training far exceeding anything taught in civilian self-defense programs. Her tactical awareness had enabled her to track multiple threats simultaneously while maintaining perfect spatial control of the engagement environment. Each elimination had been calculated to prevent alerting other attackers while systematically reducing the threat until all hostile forces had been neutralized without harm to any hospital personnel or patients. The aftermath had been managed with precision that matched Victoria's combat performance. Federal investigators had arrived to find 12 bodies arranged in positions that suggested they had been killed during internal conflict rather than by external intervention. The official report had concluded that the terrorist cell had suffered casualties due to equipment malfunction and leadership disputes. Miss Hayes, the mysterious recruiter, had said 1 week later, "What you accomplished requires capabilities that exceed documented human performance parameters. We need to understand what you are and how your abilities can serve American interests." The man who approached her had carried credentials from organizations that existed in the deepest levels of government classification. His background investigation had revealed that Victoria Hayes officially existed in all appropriate databases, but deeper analysis had uncovered anomalies suggesting her entire identity had been carefully constructed by intelligence professionals over many years. The testing that followed had documented capabilities that challenged fundamental understanding of human combat potential. Her reflexes operated at speeds that approached the theoretical maximum of nervous system transmission, while her spatial awareness enabled her to process and respond to multiple simultaneous threats faster than most people could identify a single attacker. Neurological evaluation had revealed brain activity patterns that were unprecedented in medical literature. Her visual processing operated at frequencies that enabled her to track multiple moving objects while calculating optimal engagement sequences faster than computer modeling systems could provide tactical solutions. The psychological assessment had been equally remarkable and disturbing. Victoria demonstrated the ability to eliminate human targets with clinical detachment while maintaining perfect emotional stability and professional compassion. She could perform life-saving surgery in the morning and eliminate multiple threats in the evening, switching between healing and killing with psychological flexibility that psychiatric specialists found both fascinating and terrifying. Project Nemesis training had been conducted at facilities buried beneath legitimate military installations, using methodologies that pushed human combat capability beyond anything previously attempted. The program combined advanced biomechanics with neurological enhancement techniques that optimized every aspect of human fighting performance. Her medical education had continued throughout her combat training, providing legitimate credentials while simultaneously developing her understanding of human anatomy in ways that enhanced her elimination techniques. She learned to identify pressure points that could cause instant unconsciousness, joint vulnerabilities that could disable opponents without permanent damage, and neurological targets that could neutralize threats while preserving intelligence value. The biomechanical training had been revolutionary, teaching her to generate force vectors that exceeded her apparent physical limitations through perfect technique application and kinetic energy manipulation. She learned to redirect opponents' attacks against them while simultaneously engaging multiple threats through positioning and timing that approached mathematical perfection. Neurological enhancement had involved procedures that optimized her brain's processing speed and spatial awareness, while eliminating psychological barriers that prevented normal humans from responding optimally to life-and-death situations. Her reaction times had been accelerated to near superhuman levels while maintaining perfect tactical decision-making under extreme stress. The psychological conditioning had been perhaps the most crucial component, enabling her to function as a perfect combat operative while maintaining authentic medical professional identity. She could genuinely care for patients and colleagues while simultaneously planning their elimination if circumstances required, switching between roles without behavioral inconsistency or emotional conflict. Her operational record with Project Nemesis included neutralization of hostile forces in 17 situations where she had been deliberately targeted due to her apparent medical vulnerability. Her missions had been so classified they were documented only in files that required presidential authorization to access. But her confirmed eliminations included terrorist cells, criminal organizations, and enemy operatives who had specifically chosen her as what they believed would be an easy target. Her most extraordinary operation had occurred in Eastern Europe, where she had been captured by a human trafficking organization that specialized in targeting medical personnel for ransom operations. The 14 captors had believed her medical background made her valuable but harmless, providing them with leverage against American interests while posing minimal security risks during captivity. Victoria's escape from the hostile facility had required neutralizing all 14 captors using only techniques that left no forensic evidence of American special operations involvement. Her elimination methods had been so sophisticated that local authorities had concluded the deaths resulted from internal violence related to criminal competition rather than external intervention. The engagement had demonstrated her ability to function as a one-person special operations team, gathering intelligence about the criminal organization's structure and operations while systematically eliminating threats that could compromise American personnel or interests. Her tactical approach had been so subtle that the facility's security systems had recorded what appeared to be routine prisoner movement until all hostile forces had been neutralized. Lieutenant Commander Hayes represents the pinnacle of human combat evolution disguised as medical professional service, her classified evaluation stated. Her integration of medical expertise with combat capabilities creates operational possibilities that exceed conventional special operations approaches while maintaining perfect cover identity that enables access to environments where traditional operators cannot function. Her reputation within the most classified intelligence circles had grown through successful operations where apparent vulnerability had been transformed into devastating tactical advantage. Intelligence officials with the highest clearances began requesting Victoria specifically for missions requiring capabilities that challenged conventional understanding of what individual operators could accomplish. Her assignment to the SEAL training facility served multiple classified objectives, evaluating candidate psychological profiles for advanced programs, assessing training methodologies for potential enhancement, and providing security capabilities that exceeded normal protective measures through defensive superiority that could neutralize any conceivable threat. Her cover as medical personnel was perfect for these objectives. Medical officers had unrestricted access throughout the facility, could observe candidates under stressful conditions that revealed psychological characteristics, and were positioned to assess threats while maintaining operational security about their true capabilities. But maintaining her cover required enduring not just dismissive attitudes, but active contempt from military personnel who viewed medical support as evidence of weakness rather than strength. For someone whose combat capabilities could neutralize entire special operations teams, pretending to be intimidated by aggressive military culture required psychological discipline that matched her tactical training. The contempt had been systematic since her arrival at the facility. Her medical background and professional demeanor had immediately marked her as someone who lacked understanding of warrior culture in the minds of personnel who associated medical service with weakness and dependency rather than strength and capability. Gunnery Sergeant Kowalski had been the most vocal in expressing dismissive attitudes that reflected his assumption that medical personnel were inherently inferior to combat specialists. His Marine Corps background and extensive combat experience had created confidence that medical officers could never understand or contribute to the warrior culture that defined special operations. Medical personnel are necessary, but they're not warriors, Kowalski had announced during one training session, his comments clearly directed at Victoria despite her professional competence and obvious intelligence. They provide support services, but they don't understand what it means to face real danger or make life-and-death decisions under pressure. His assessment had been supported by other instructors whose combat experience had created similar assumptions about the relationship between medical training and tactical capability. Their worldview placed medical personnel in support roles that required protection rather than recognizing them as potential assets with complementary skills. Master Chief Rodriguez, Senior Chief Thompson, and Chief Petty Officer Martinez had shared Kowalski's assumptions while maintaining professional courtesy that masked their fundamental beliefs about medical officers' limitations. Their combined experience in special operations had convinced them that medical training was incompatible with the aggressive mindset required for combat effectiveness. "She's competent at medical duties," Rodriguez had commented to his colleagues, "but she clearly doesn't understand the physical and mental demands of combat situations." Medical personnel live in controlled environments where violence is theoretical rather than practical reality. Thompson had agreed with this assessment. Medical officers are trained to preserve life, which creates psychological barriers that prevent them from understanding situations where taking life might be necessary. They lack the warrior mindset that defines effective special operations personnel. Martinez had been more direct in his evaluation. "She seems like a decent person, but she doesn't belong in environments where combat effectiveness determines survival." Medical personnel should stick to medical duties and leave tactical decisions to people with appropriate training and experience. Victoria had maintained complete professional composure during these discussions, never responding to provocative comments while internally conducting psychological assessments that provided detailed intelligence about each individual's character, capabilities, and potential vulnerabilities that enemy forces might exploit if they achieved special operations assignments. Her silence had been interpreted as confirmation of their assumptions about her intimidation and unfamiliarity with combat culture, but actually represented tactical decision-making that preserved her operational cover while gathering information necessary for her classified assessment mission. The situation that would shatter every assumption about Victoria's capabilities began during an advanced hand-to-hand combat demonstration designed to showcase the fighting skills that SEAL candidates needed to develop for operational effectiveness. Kowalski had arranged a training scenario that involved multiple instructors demonstrating combat techniques against each other to show candidates how professional special operations personnel handled close-quarters engagements under realistic conditions. The demonstration was intended to be educational rather than competitive, showing candidates the level of skill they needed to achieve while emphasizing the importance of continuous training and tactical awareness in maintaining combat effectiveness. "Gentlemen," Kowalski announced to the assembled candidates, "combat effectiveness requires capabilities that extend beyond basic training. Watch how experienced operators handle multiple threat scenarios and adapt their techniques based on opponent capabilities and environmental factors." His explanation was comprehensive, covering the psychological as well as physical aspects of combat, while emphasizing the importance of aggressive mindset and tactical flexibility in overcoming challenges that candidates would face in operational environments. The demonstration had proceeded professionally until Kowalski noticed Victoria observing the training from her medical station. Her attention to the combat techniques had been interpreted as inappropriate interest in activities beyond her medical responsibilities, prompting commentary that revealed his assumptions about her role and capabilities. "Even our medical support is trying to understand warrior training," Kowalski announced with obvious condescension, his comment drawing laughter from candidates and instructors who shared his assumptions about medical personnel's limitations. His follow-up comment had been even more dismissive. "Maybe the doc thinks she can contribute to combat training discussions. She's just a nurse, but I suppose medical personnel might benefit from understanding what real combat looks like." The comment had been intended as harmless military humor that reinforced established hierarchies while emphasizing the distinction between combat specialists and support personnel. Kowalski's assumption was that Victoria would either ignore the comment or respond with good-natured acknowledgement of her non-combatant status. Instead, Victoria had made a decision that would permanently alter the dynamics at the facility. "Gunnery Sergeant," Victoria had said in her characteristically soft voice. "Would it be educational to demonstrate how medical personnel might respond to close-quarters threats in operational environments?" The suggestion had been so unexpected that Kowalski initially questioned whether he had understood correctly. Medical personnel weren't trained for combat demonstration, particularly not against experienced special operations instructors whose combat skills had been developed through years of training and operational experience. "Doc," Kowalski had replied with barely concealed amusement, "combat demonstration requires training and experience that exceeds medical education. That's not something medical personnel should attempt with operators who have years of special operations background." But Victoria's calm confidence had suggested capabilities that might provide educational value even if her performance was unsuccessful. Kowalski's curiosity about her theoretical knowledge, combined with the entertainment value of showing candidates the difference between medical and combat training, had convinced him to allow a controlled demonstration. If you're serious about this, Kowalski had decided, we'll set up a scenario where you can show candidates how medical personnel might handle threatening situations. But understand that this is educational demonstration, not realistic combat assessment. Rodriguez, Thompson, and Martinez had volunteered to participate in what they expected would be a brief demonstration of how medical personnel would struggle against trained operators, providing educational value while reinforcing appropriate role boundaries between combat and support specialties. What happened next would be analyzed by combat specialists and military psychologists for years to come. Victoria's transformation from gentle medical officer to perfect combat operative had been so immediate and complete that observers initially thought they were witnessing different people. Her movement toward the center of the training mat had been conducted with biomechanical precision that demonstrated years of advanced combat training. Her tactical positioning had been optimal from the moment the demonstration began, creating angles that would enable simultaneous engagement of multiple opponents while maintaining environmental awareness that exceeded anything the candidates had been taught during their training. The engagement itself had been a masterclass in multi-opponent combat conducted at speeds that challenged human optical tracking. Victoria's techniques had been so fluid and precise that each instructor had been neutralized before any of them could coordinate effective responses or defensive measures. Rodriguez had been eliminated first using a technique that appeared to be simple physical contact but actually involved precise neurological pressure point application that caused instant unconsciousness without permanent damage. His elimination had been so swift and subtle that Thompson and Martinez hadn't initially realized their colleague was down. Thompson and Martinez had attempted to coordinate their response, but Victoria's spatial awareness had enabled her to track and counter both threats simultaneously using ambidextrous techniques that demonstrated perfect bilateral coordination beyond normal human capabilities. Thompson's attempted grappling technique had been reversed into a submission hold that rendered him unconscious, while Victoria simultaneously engaged Martinez using techniques that neutralized his striking attempts before transitioning to control methods that left him equally helpless. The entire engagement had lasted 8 seconds from initial contact to complete neutralization of all three instructors, with Victoria's performance demonstrating combat mastery that exceeded anything the candidates had encountered during their training or previous military experience. Her immediate transition back to medical duties, as she began checking each unconscious instructor for injuries from the engagement, had been so professional that observers needed several minutes to process what they had witnessed. The training area had fallen completely silent as 42 SEAL candidates, multiple instructors, and facility staff stared at a medical officer who had just demonstrated combat capabilities that challenged their understanding of human potential and military training effectiveness. Gunnery Sergeant Kowalski had been the first to approach Victoria, his expression mixing shock with growing professional respect for capabilities he hadn't known existed. The three instructors remained unconscious on the mat, their combined decades of special operations experience having provided no advantage against techniques that exceeded their training and experience. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, Kowalski had said, his voice carrying obvious amazement, that was the most professional multiple-opponent engagement I've witnessed in 23 years of military service. Your combat capabilities exceed anything I've seen from special operations personnel. Victoria's response had been delivered in her characteristic gentle manner. Gunnery Sergeant, medical training in forward operational environments sometimes requires capabilities that enable medical personnel to continue providing care when conventional protection isn't available. The implications of her statement had begun reshaping how everyone at the facility understood their medical officer's true role and background. Kowalski had asked the question everyone was thinking, "Ma'am, what kind of medical assignments require combat training that exceeds special operations instructor capabilities?" Victoria's answer had provided the first glimpse into programs that most military personnel would never encounter. Specialized medical support where conventional security measures aren't adequate, and where medical personnel must be capable of independent tactical action while maintaining primary medical responsibilities. Over the following hours, as facility leadership had coordinated with agencies whose existence required security clearances exceeding anything they possessed, carefully controlled information about Victoria's background had been revealed through channels that operated beyond normal military command structures. The revelation had permanently compromised Victoria's cover, but had also provided combat training opportunities that could prepare SEAL candidates for operational situations that conventional instruction couldn't address. The revolutionary combat training program Victoria developed became unlike anything available in military education. Working within operational security constraints that required approval from intelligence agencies, she created scenarios that taught candidates multi-opponent engagement, threat assessment, and combat techniques that reflected capabilities developed through the most classified programs in American defense research. Her instruction methods focused on tactical psychology and biomechanical efficiency rather than strength-based approaches, enabling candidates to achieve combat effectiveness against superior numbers or larger opponents through superior technique application and tactical thinking. What Lieutenant Commander Hayes is teaching you, Kowalski announced to new candidates, represents combat science at levels that exceed conventional military training. This program will develop capabilities that could determine survival in operational environments where traditional techniques might be inadequate. Victoria's training scenarios included defense against multiple coordinated attackers, psychological warfare techniques that could prevent confrontations through strategic intimidation, and combat methods that could neutralize threats while maintaining cover identities that were essential for operational security. The psychological components of her training addressed mental preparation for situations where medical personnel might need to eliminate threats to continue providing care to wounded American forces. Candidates learned to overcome moral reservations that could prevent effective action when circumstances required immediate tactical response. Her training included advanced biomechanics instruction that taught candidates to exploit leverage and momentum principles that could enable smaller operators to defeat larger opponents through superior technique rather than physical advantages they might lack. The facility's reputation for producing exceptionally capable SEAL operators was enhanced by Victoria's combat training programs. Graduates reported achieving fighting capabilities they had never imagined possible, with tactical awareness that exceeded their peers at other training facilities. International Special Operations Forces began requesting information about the advanced combat training being conducted at the facility. Victoria's reputation within the global special operations community grew through successful methods that other nations wanted to understand and potentially implement. Years later, when operational security constraints allowed limited disclosure about her background, Victoria's story became legendary throughout the special operations and intelligence communities. Her example demonstrated that true combat mastery often serves quietly behind covers that conceal capabilities exceeding anything enemies could imagine. The instructors whose assumptions had triggered Victoria's demonstration became her strongest advocates, understanding that they had been privileged to witness someone whose combat expertise represented the absolute pinnacle of human fighting capability disguised as medical professional service. The facility where assumptions about medical personnel had led to dismissive attitudes became a place where combat excellence was recognized and developed regardless of apparent role or background. Victoria's legacy reminded everyone that underestimation could be the most dangerous tactical mistake in environments where survival depended on accurate threat assessment. The moment when Victoria neutralized 3 experienced instructors in 8 seconds had lasted only heartbeats, but its impact continued for years, reminding everyone that exceptional capabilities often hide behind humble professional service and that assumptions about others' limitations often reveal dangerous blind spots in tactical thinking. Her story became a permanent reminder that in special operations, the most valuable people are often those whose true expertise remains carefully concealed behind routine professional responsibilities, waiting for the moment when their capabilities can protect American lives and accomplish missions that others consider impossible. This story was brought to you by Silent Salute. Before we share our next remarkable account, here's our question. Have you ever witnessed someone whose professional role completely concealed their true expertise? Have you encountered moments when quiet competence revealed capabilities that exceeded everything you expected? Tell us in the comments about times when you realized that your assumptions about someone's limitations were completely wrong. And if you believe that true expertise often serves without seeking recognition until circumstances require its demonstration, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. Every story reminds us that exceptional abilities often hide behind ordinary professional appearances, and that the people who seem least threatening may possess the most remarkable capabilities for protecting others when it matters most.